Did you encounter anything that was surprising for you when you were developing this game?
Oh, constantly, I think. But from the beginning, I was surprised how much interest the game generated. Even from like the early on simple images or screenshots that I shared. I was surprised how many people were interested in it, like from the get-go. And in a way, it sort of can be like a blessing and a curse at the same time, because even though I am saying that I'm trying not to put pressure on myself, it's kind of hard to say to cancel the game right now if I decided to, because of how many people are looking forward to it.
Okay.
What else surprised me is how quickly the market changes. Something that worked like a few months ago may not work anymore right now. A lot of the things that didn't even exist when I started 6 years ago. Discord didn't exist. Let's see, Twitch wasn't as big back then as it is now. New game stores are coming up, like Epic Game Store. So yeah, the market is constantly changing, and you sort of have to keep an eye on it all the time to see what the trends are. So you have like a better picture of where you stand in the industry. I think a lot of indies, me included, also are surprised how hard or how much more complicated it is. It looks much easier at first. I definitely didn't think this game is going to take me 6 years to make.
Okay.
But yeah, programmers in general are bad at making estimates, I guess.
Okay. Is there anything that you would have done differently looking back at this, 6 years of development?
Probably I would have gone with a smaller game idea.
Okay.
I think it makes more sense to try to release something smaller first and build from that. Like make each new game a little bit bigger than the last one, and hopefully each of the games will help finance the new one then. Also, I think at least nowadays I would suggest indie developers to start marketing and building your brand early on, and concentrate more on the game when you actually built the community already. I've seen a few indie developers do that. They start by posting, for example, YouTube video blogs about game development in general, or like their day-to-day lives when transitioning into game development or things like that. And once they have a community, they get more serious about making the game. That way, you're not this unknown entity that suddenly one day just releases a game, but doesn't have any audience for it.
Okay. So it's so much more than actually game development.
Yeah. As the market gets more and more crowded, the marketing part becomes more and more important, and maybe even more important than the game itself, in a way.
Okay. Do you want to add something about your development process, about your lifestyle, about your community that you think it is important?
I think it's important to understand that the way I do things works for me, but not necessarily for everyone, or actually maybe not even anyone else. Everyone has like different personalities, different things that they like. You definitely have to take that into consideration when looking for examples, and it's not just like me, but looking at any other game developer as an idol or like a role model. Like take what you can from them, but you do it your own way, the way that suits you. Like I, for example, I did talk to a lot of publishers about the game as well.
Okay.
Some of them contacted me, some of them I contacted myself. And we discussed like a partnership or a potential partnership with them. But in the end I decided that I want to publish the game myself, not through a publisher. Because most of the time when you have a publishing partner, then the game becomes a full-time job, or I've seen some people even mention it becomes like 2 full-time jobs. So you have to keep that in mind. Is it something you want to do? I like my freedom more than I like money, so any prospective business deals or like income I could have gotten from publishers, I decided it's not worth it for me personally. And I prefer my freedom to do things my way more. But not everyone might think that way. But you still have to keep in mind, even if you have a publisher, a lot of gaming developers go to them because they think they're bad at marketing, and they think that's the part where the publisher will help them. And it is true to some degree, but from what I've seen, most publishers concentrate more on the sales part and less on the marketing part. In the sense that marketing is more like brand building, and sales is trying to convert people into paying customers. So most publishers will do sales and maybe market their own brand, but rarely will they market the developer's brand. So for long term, the developer will still have to do his or her own marketing as well. But publishers can provide funding for the development, so that's something that some people might need. So yeah, just have to consider your options.
Okay, just considering different priorities, I guess.
Yeah.
So your games will come up on Steam?
Yes, that is the main plan right now.
Okay. So what do you think about your relationship with Steam as a platform? Because people have, different opinions about this, especially when, the indies, when they release, their first big game.
Yeah. Since the recent algorithm change, it changed a lot for the indies. They made a change in September.
Yes.
And like before, I used to get a lot of traffic from inside Steam to my game. After the change, the traffic dropped quite a bit, to the point when I'm like on some days losing more wish lists than gaining them. So that change has been tough to swallow for a lot of indies, and they blame Steam for it. But I also understand that Steam is doing what they think is best for them, and I have to just accept it. So the way it now works is you basically have to bring your own customers, which was the case for many indies anyway. But then it brings the question like if Steam is taking the 30% cut from each sale, and some stores are taking less, and if I have to bring my own customers anyway, then is Steam still the best store to release as an indie? So there's things to consider there. I think it's still worth it for me because of the traffic I got previously and the amount of wish lists I gathered before the algorithm change. If I had a new game now that didn't have a Steam page yet, I'd have to think about it harder though. But there is also the fact that Steam still provides this platform that people trust. So maybe it's harder to convince customers to buy something from some other store that they don't know about yet. Like even if they are my fan already or are interested in the game, they still want to buy it on Steam instead of say smaller places like itch.io.
Yeah.
So it depends who your customers are. So I guess you just have to research that first.
Yeah.
But in general, Steam is still the biggest PC gaming platform. The others are not even close yet. And the ones that are a little bit bigger, like Epic Store or GOG, they have quite strict selection for the games that they let onto their store. So in a way, for many, Steam is still the best alternative. I do wish they would improve some of their things, and I hope they will over time, but yeah, I accept it that it is the way it is, and I'll try to do my best within the platform that they provide right now.
Okay, so this is basically the result of existing in the system.
Yeah.
In a sense, yeah. Okay. So, do you see any advantages of starting a company in Estonia, or advantages and disadvantages in a sense?
Yeah, I think Estonia is kind of an outlier in a way, where like almost everyone has a company of some kind.
Yeah, but
because it's so easy to start one here. You just fill out the form online, and like 2 hours later you have a company. So in that sense, yes, that is a big advantage. If you want to be in game development in Estonia and you want to make your own games, it's definitely beneficial to create your own company for tax reasons and for also like legal reasons. So the negative is, of course, you have to do accounting, you have to file for taxes, you have to know all that stuff or hire someone to do that for you. And of course you have to familiarize yourself with the legal parts of it as well. So yeah, I do my own accounting, but for most people I don't really suggest it. Hire someone who knows what they're actually doing. So you have to budget for that, definitely.
Do you think Estonia is have some, I don't know how to say, benefits for someone who wants to develop games? So it's not only about how hard.
Estonia and Eastern Europe in general have quite low living costs. which means that it's cheaper to develop games here. But the games market is global. So that gives us a competitive advantage, especially as the market gets more crowded and the profits get smaller per game. There is going to be a point, I think, when it's no longer sensible to make games in expensive areas, especially for indies. Already people are sharing numbers that average games are not even making minimum wage. Even average, like decent or good games are not making minimum wage level profits in United States. Especially on the West Coast, in the Silicon Valley area or so, where a programmer can earn from 100K to 150K dollars per year, and it's very hard to make that much with an indie game, and that's just for a single programmer. Most teams have more than one person working for them, right? So while in Estonia we still lack sort of the knowledge on how to make games. Like, sure, we know how to code here. Estonians are good at that. We know how to make art. But putting it all together into a game, and especially the game design aspect of it, it's kind of a different story. So there's a lot to learn there. Plus, there's a lot to learn about the games market in general. But yes, the low living costs are definitely a big advantage for us. So yeah, if you want to become an indie in Estonia, that is something you can rely on, sort of. Especially if you move into these smaller towns in Estonia, because like it costs so little to get by here, even compared to Tallinn.
Okay. So are you living far away from Tallinn, or?
Yeah, I live in a small town called Türi, which is in the middle of Estonia, and the apartments, when I bought the apartment here, it didn't really cost a lot of money. The prices have risen since then, but there's still a lot of cheap areas in Estonia. Where you can buy like an apartment for like a few thousand euros even. And if you're willing to give up the conveniences of living in a bigger city, then that's one avenue to consider. But even living in Tallinn is still a lot cheaper than living in San Francisco.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, if the profits go lower, just think of the ways how to survive despite that.
Okay, so any other advantages in a sense? Can be not only about Estonia, but I don't know, other related things, within the region or community, or I don't know, this kind of elements. Or primarily this is like lower living cost.
Yeah, mostly I think. Of course, the community is nice here as well. The main hub for Estonian game developers is a Discord group that we created. It was something that came from the community itself. No organization was behind it. So that's, I think, the most active community. If any of the people are interested in it and are not in it, it's called Estonian Game Development Discord. And I don't know if there's like a good link to it. People can contact me then, and I can send them the invite. There's like hundreds of people there already, I think. Yeah. I'm looking at it right now. There's like 300 people in there. Not all of them are active game developers, of course, but some are interested in it in some way. But the main companies in Estonia that are doing it more seriously, they're all in there and talking to each other and sharing information. That's all definitely good for the whole Estonian game development industry. But yeah, of course, these sorts of communities tend to pop up pretty much everywhere you go. So I don't know if that's like a specific advantage over other countries, but it's still nice to have other people who are doing similar things to you. Right?
So are you active participant of this kind of community, or you just prefer?
Yeah, actually, when I got started 6 years ago, there wasn't much of a community at all. There was one forum where some people were making hobbyists games, and I got involved in there a bit, and then I started talking with other Estonian game developers on Twitter, I think. Then we formed a Skype group at first. I was one of the originators for it. And I also organized some events back then, sort of the style that IGDA is doing now. But it wasn't originally an IGDA event. We just gathered like once a month or so. And talked about our stuff. So I helped organize those at first. At some point I involved IGDA in it as well. I was a member of the IGDA global, what's it called? Well, it's basically like a subscription.
So this is the main one, international.
Yeah, the international one. So I was a member of that, and so I was sort of semi-involved with the Estonian one as well then. And I helped organize events under their sort of brand then as well. But then other people joined, and they took over the whole thing. And then I moved out of Tallinn, so I haven't been involved in those anymore at all. I haven't been visiting those events anymore. So, but I think they're a good thing, and also the ones organized by the Tartu community.
APT.
APT Game Lab, Game Generator. They make like really good events that are more geared towards hobbyists, and it also nicely helps to like balance out, I think, the whole community thing. But yeah, these days my involvement mostly is on the Discord group. IGDA also, and APT as well has their Facebook pages. But those are definitely not as active as the Discord group is.
What do you think about these activities provided by? Do you think it is, very helpful for young developers in Estonia? What is your opinion?
The Discord one, I think, is that it's sort of hard for new developers to find it right now. Like I said, like there's no like good link to it even. But that comes from the way that Discord works. So maybe we should make a community website as well. We haven't really discussed it, but maybe I should bring it up with them. But newer developers, well, hopefully they at least find the IGDA and the APT events, and from there they get invited to the Discord group. And there are some smaller communities as well. There was this community, I don't know if it's active anymore, but at least a few years ago they operated called Game Lab.
Yeah, I think they still there.
And let's see what else. There might be some others, but can't think of right now. And of course, schools as well, like mine are, or Tallinn University, where they have the game development curriculums.
Have you ever been involved with,
Yeah, I taught the course in a minor. I taught sound design there for games. But that was like one semester thing. I don't know if someone else is teaching it now, or if it's even like part of the curriculum right now or not.
Okay.
But that's what I did both in Tartu and Tallinn when they had a class in Tartu as well.
So what do you think about, because if you are engaged in supporting some educational courses or classes for students, do you think we need more education in terms of, different parts of game development for students at university? Or
it's hard to say because from one hand, yes, because most of the people involved right now are self-taught, and that doesn't suit everyone. And also, well, we might not do some things the most optimal way, so to say. But it's also hard to teach when there's no one to teach it, right? And we also have to take into consideration what the students will do afterwards, after finishing the courses. There's not that many jobs in game industry in Estonia where they can apply. There's only a few companies that hire people actually. Like companies like ours, we can't hire anyone. We don't have the funds for that. So sure, you can then start your own indie development company like we did, but then the question is, what exactly do you teach to those students? Do you teach like how to survive in the indie industry, or do you teach how to work for a bigger company? So it's hard to say what exactly would be needed, and I think smarter people than me would have to decide on those things.
Okay. No, I was just interested in this because I know how many companies are here, and that exactly as you said, not many are hiring people.
Yeah. But of course, you can still apply to companies in other countries.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you can go to Finland or Sweden, but that the fact that we already have courses about game development in Estonia.
Yeah.
This is.
It's still quite new as well. That also didn't exist back when I started.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard to say where it's going to go. In some other countries, it's also been a sort of negative experience in a way, especially when it's a paid course, because it comes back down to what's the quality of the course.
Yes.
Or like, what do you actually learn from there that you can apply in a job situation, especially if it costs a lot of money. So it's hard to say. Or should we just because like general programming courses exist in Estonia.
Of course.
General art courses exist in Estonia. So those already can be a foundation for game development as well. So the most sensible part to teach then would be game design, perhaps. But it's hard to teach that then again. It's especially hard to find a job in game design, even in other countries, because there's only so many game designers you need. Like even for a AAA company, you have a handful of game designers there, and maybe hundreds of people who are programmers or artists. So I don't know.
Okay. No, I was just interested, because of your own experience actually teaching students about these things.
I definitely like the experience myself. I didn't like the logistics part of it.
Okay.
Because coming from Türi to Tallinn and Tartu, it's complicated when I don't even have a car. So that part I didn't like, but the teaching itself I enjoyed. But from that point of view, it's also possible to do that online, like make online courses. And I've been thinking of doing that instead.
So do you actually showing people how because you mentioned your Twitch, streaming?
Yeah, that actually started from that. One of the game developers in Estonia, I was interested in how I approach making music. And he made like a small snippet of his own music. He sent it to me, and then I made a live stream where I showed how I would change it and how I would make it my way. So that's where I started the streaming from. And then some people asked me to continue doing those.
That's nice.
So that's when I continued. Then I showed like making music from scratch for my own game. I explained some music theory to accompany it, and then same with the pixel art, like how I approach pixel art. And since I'm not really someone who's like an artist type, I have no like traditional art background. Like I can't even draw anything on paper, to be honest. Not even a proper stick figure.
Okay.
But I found that I can sort of take my engineer's mindset to pixel art and sort of like build it instead of drawing it in a strict sense. So I've been showing how I do that, and so maybe some other programmer types can learn from that as well.
Okay. So you're engaged, in a sense of disseminating knowledge to others, also
definitely.
online.
And I also try to share my thoughts in some other form, like maybe on Twitter sometimes. And recently I tried to post things on LinkedIn as well, that are more like giving advice to people or tips or something like that. Just sharing some things that I've learned over the years.
Okay. So do you find, I understand that you can communicate more worldwide than in Estonia only. But do you find this is useful way for you, to share knowledge with people? Or?
Yeah, I think so. Of course, I'd like the Estonian game development industry to develop as well, and I do try to contribute to that in ways that I can. But more and more, it's a global world with the internet existing, and it makes less and less sense to draw like these country border lines on the internet. So yeah, since my customers are going to be mainly from outside Estonia, it also makes sense for me to engage with the global community.
Do you see any disadvantages for people who decide to work in a game dev, open their own studio, and start as a hobbyist game maker in Estonia? Because we talk about good things, we talk about the education aspect of it. Is there anything not so great?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned, it doesn't only mean in Estonia, but in general, game development pays less than other IT jobs, because it's sort of seen as this dream job in a way. Like, this is something that people think is more like interesting than developing, I don't know, bank software, for example. So the game companies often pay less than banks then, or other IT sectors. And I don't know how true that is in Estonian game development companies, because some of them I think pay decently compared to other IT companies in Estonia, but maybe it's still a little bit lower than the best paying IT jobs. So that's one of the disadvantages, especially if you go into it as indie, then most prospects for profits go out the window. It's not very lucrative unless you're really, really good at it. But besides that, well, like I said, there's not many jobs available, so that's definitely a disadvantage for anyone interested in working in the game development industry but not becoming indie, or as a hobbyist, and actually as indie as well. In Estonia, you don't have the sort of infrastructure in place, especially like financially, since the government is not supporting these sort of endeavors much compared to some other countries. Like in Finland, I think the government put a lot of money into the game industry some years ago, and it seemed to have worked for them. But on the other side, I'm actually not a big supporter of putting taxpayers' money into game development like this. You could argue that if the industry grows, it's going to generate more tax revenue for the country. So that's one side of it, but yeah, it's hard to measure beforehand if it's going to be good or not. So in general, like these, especially when it comes to lifestyle sort of game development, then I don't think it should be paid by other taxpayers. If you want to do it, then find your own way to do it. You're responsible for it, not other taxpayers, right?
Okay. So you in general against any government support for the sector?
It depends. I think government should and could support education, for example, for game development, and maybe some of the infrastructure, like say IGDA. But I'm not sure if they should support companies directly.
Okay, so not sure about direct funding.
Yeah.
And things like that. Okay.
Some countries do it, and often it seems to go to the richest companies, and I'm not sure that's a good thing. But then again, they also generate most tax revenue for the country, so maybe that would be the best. And I don't know, it's hard to say.
Okay.
I think this also has to be decided by smarter people than I am.
Okay. But you are for education and some small communities.
I would mostly support education, yeah. But it's definitely something that should be at least discussed in the community and between different parts of the industry. And, yeah, I'm pretty sure people are going to have wildly different opinions on this matter as well.
Yes. I mean, definitely, yeah, because it's such a huge topic.
Yeah. But I have not gotten any government support for my game or my company, and I don't think I should have anyway. So I'm happy with how I've done things. Self-financing it through the freelance work and other such income feels more fair to me, so to say.
Okay. Do you want to add anything else about Estonian community, industry here, government that you think it is important or would be important for people to know?
Well, just that I really appreciate them existing in the first place. That I'm not completely unknown. Because at the beginning, it kind of felt like there's not that many of us. And not that many that stayed long term, at least. But it's been nice to see the community grow. Maybe slowly, but still surely, especially with some big hits now, like Disco Elysium, for example.